Okay, so the panel here is about the future of big data and AI. Essentially, we want to see, to have our great panel here to do some predictive analytics and predictive AI to tell us, 10 years from now, where would we be in the whole area of big data, AI, and data analytics. So we have a great panel here that covers experts from the area of connected and autonomous vehicles, areas related to the future of telecommunications networks in the era of big data. And we have experts from the healthcare field as well, from CHIO, to tell us about the future of big data when it comes to healthcare. We have experts from the Vector Institute who will tell us as well, the future as far as Vector Institute is concerned, and AI, and also the employment opportunities and changes in the landscape there. And we have a representative as well from OCE, Ontario Centres of Excellence, who will tell us about the OCE's view and role in promoting this area. So now I'll let each panel member maybe introduce themselves very quickly by saying their names and their expertise and telling you their views on the future of AI and big data. And then every presentation will be a maximum of 10 minutes, and then we'll have questions. So I'll ask the first presenter. Please go ahead.
Sure, yes. Should I come to the stage or just introduction at the moment?
No, you can start your presentation right away by mentioning your name and the introduction, and do the presentation right away.
Thank you. So I'll just come to stage perhaps. And President Bacon, Vice President Kubran, dear guests, it is a real privilege to be part of Data Day 6.0. My subject domain is networks, in particular wireless networks. And today I will talk about the next big thing in wireless networks. Well, as many of you know, wireless networks come in generations. Now we are entering the 5G era. Standardization is about to be finalized, and networks will be deployed throughout the next decade. What is special about 5G is that it is not about smartphones anymore, but we are moving into the connectivity models of everything from the factory floor, moving robots to connected cars. Therefore, it is not accidental that 5G is in the news on a daily basis, and different governments are racing for leadership, akin to the nuclear leadership, leadership of the Cold War times. Actually, just last month, President Trump sent a tweet in which he was saying that he wants 6G for the US or US leadership in that front. So if 5G is so important today, very strategic, imagine it is the importance of 6G when that discussion starts and 6G networks to be deployed around 2030s. Now, let us kind of open the hood and check what happened in the last 20, 30 years in which we moved from the GSM days to 5G discussions today. Actually, the number one thing that happened is progressively we had more and more bandwidth, higher frequencies, millimeter wave. And then we had more powerful antennas. And thirdly, we have more and more infrastructure and ultra-dense network. But all of these are not necessarily very intelligent. Rather, it is a brute force design by over-provisioning, just more and more and more. But this is not sustainable anymore. It is not scalable, it is not green, and it is certainly not affordable. Now let us once again look at how the networks are designed historically as well as today. The network has in mind a kind of invisible typical user, and applications are delivered, for instance video, in such a way that this virtual typical user is satisfied most of the time. And now I will reveal you a big secret. In reality, there is no typical user. Actually, there are 6 or 7 billion plus users. All of us are very different with very different tastes, likes, and dislikes. To make the situation more complicated, if you take one user like me, it is not the same person in a way in the morning or in a meeting setting at a leisure time, so on and so forth. My expectations and wants are very dynamic based on the context, situation, so on and so forth. Without going into too much technicality, for every application like video, there are a number of key performance indicators to be satisfied so that the presumed typical user will be satisfied most of the time. For instance, rate has to be higher than so much, 5 megabits per second, for instance. The latency should be at most, say, 200 milliseconds. Reliability should be not more than 10 to the minus 2 packet error rate, so on and so forth. So in today's design, these KPI values are fixed, and we have one set of values that should be good for everyone, which means that it is grossly over-provisioned. Now the move, as we move towards 2030s, is to have a much more agile and adaptive system in which the KPI values are adjusted for each user in real time based on the context, the mood of the user, the need, so on and so forth. So once again, we are moving from the history of brute force over provisioning in a static design towards an intelligent, adaptive, efficient design. And this results in a win-win situation for all stakeholders because the user has a much enhanced experience and the network can deliver this with much fewer resources, whether it is power or bandwidth. And as you can imagine, the main enablers in this paradigm shift is AI and data analytics for satisfaction, prediction, and analysis. One key factor is to be able to get the satisfaction feedback from users in a non-intrusive way through sentiment analysis. And this sentiment should be correctly correlated to the user's experience with the application at hand. In short, we are moving from, once again, a static design to a dynamic design which takes what's going on instantaneously in real time, and this will be the AI-enabled 6G networks. Now, if the application is rather simple, like sending an email, the KPIs are very few, or in many cases, it boils down to rate. You just want it faster. But as we move forward with much more sophisticated applications, whether it might be in the healthcare sector or autonomous connected vehicles or in augmented virtual immersed reality, we have a much rich set of KPIs, and their range is very broad, and their fine-tuning, once again, will result in a win-win situation in an intelligent networks of the future. Actually, in this area, we have been working at Carleton University for more than 2 years, and the team includes, in addition to myself, Dr. Ibrahim Abu Al-Hul, a leading data scientist who is an adjunct professor here as well, and also our award-winning PhD student, Rawan Al-Kurt. We filed a patent on some of the key technologies through Carleton University, and after that, our first set of papers are released, and the 2 conference papers shown on the screen will be presented in Shanghai in May, but they are available in ResearchGate, as well as the data is available in GitHub for those of you who are interested. Rawan has a poster outside, and if you would like to learn more about the technicalities of how we do this agile network design, or at least the vision, I invite you to check Ravan's poster. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Richard Yu. I'm from Carleton School of Information Technology. And today I'm going to talk about from big data to big intelligence, from connected and autonomous vehicle perspective. So right now, everyone is talking about connected and autonomous vehicles, and including some experts today. And it's becoming a very hot topic. And imagine in the future, you don't need to drive your car anymore. And you can if you want, but you don't have to. And every morning, probably you need to ask this big question: to drive or to be driven? So that's a tough question. Not only our daily life, but also in our whole society. So there's a video showing the intersections in the future with no traffic light. Yeah, it's coming. Okay, it's a little bit late. Yeah.
Oh, whoa.
Okay, so that's the idea here. So definitely from this video, we can see that it's not driven by humans, and it's autonomous driving. So like I said before, so autonomous and connected vehicles going to have a huge impact in our, not only the daily life, but also the future society. And you may ask the question, so when do we have this one? And today or tomorrow, or in 1 year, 2 years later, or in 10 years later? Actually, several years ago, when people talking about connected autonomous vehicles, they are very optimistic. And they're saying, okay, so we're going to have this one in 2 or 3 years. For example, this one, okay? So from this very famous magazine, they are talking about autonomous vehicles are just around the corner. And look at this beautiful vehicles here. And probably you can see that there's no steering wheel, right? So that's an autonomous vehicle here. And wait a minute. So autonomous vehicles are coming, but as a human, do we really trust autonomous vehicles? And keep in mind, in the last 2 or 3 years, there are many fatal accidents here. I just want to give you some examples. Okay, about 3 years ago, and one guy was killed by a Tesla Model S in the autonomous driving mode. And about 1 year ago, a woman was killed by autonomous cars operated by Uber. So about 1 week later, another guy killed by Tesla again in California. So those are the pictures for this fatal accidents. And in the last 2 or 3 months, actually, people are thinking about these autonomous vehicles are very, very difficult problem here. And especially there's one very famous comment from Waymo. So if you don't know this company, basically this is a division under Google working on autonomous driving. And since 2009, which was 10 years ago, the Google autonomous vehicles, they are on the road for testing, and they already got 10 million miles of the data. But the CEO last year claimed that probably this self-driving cars won't be available in the following several decades. So what's the reason here? The reason he claimed that the technology is really, really hard. It's really hard. So that's a big problem. And also there are some other comments from, for example, from New York Times. They said, okay, don't believe the self-driving hype. Okay, and that was comment made by New York Times on December 11th last year, so 2 months ago, about 2 or 3 months ago. So what's the problem here? As a researcher, we need to think about the solutions, not just some different views. So the current autonomous vehicles, we have rich sensors. We got a lot of sensors, including cameras, and we got LiDAR, radar, and wireless communication. There's a GPS, there's a communication part. For example, including the cameras, we have long-range camera, we have short-range camera, we have medium-range camera, and we have many, many sensors. But why we still cannot have this autonomous driving? So the big problem right now, we already got big data, and actually the data rate generated by one autonomous vehicle is, we are talking about gigabits per second, so a lot of data. For example, one LiDAR can generate, regular LiDAR can generate 7 megabits per second, and we got several of them. And more advanced LiDAR, we can have more than 30 megabits per second. So we already got, the bottom line here, we already got the big data, but big data is not the same as big intelligence. Okay, so this is related to general question about our current AI research, artificial intelligence research. So if you think about it, or if you're doing research in artificial intelligence, fundamentally, the current breakthrough for AI is data-driven approach. So what do you mean by data-driven approach? If you have a big data and then you have some intelligence, if you have limited data, you have limited intelligence. If you have no data, there's no intelligence. Okay, one example in autonomous driving here is that for Google cars, they already got 10 million miles, but they never got here in Ottawa. We have a lot of snows, right? So that's one example for limited data. So for Google cars, they don't have the training data for real snowy environment. And what about sharing our data with them? And if you want to share that, in the current situation, we don't have the incentive to share that. Okay, and to share the intelligence and also in sharing the data. And also, if I want to share with them, do they trust us or not? Okay, probably they don't trust us. And also, there's no language. Probably I need to make a phone call to ask Google, okay, can I share the data? So that is not the data sharing we are talking about. The data sharing we are talking about autonomous sharing. And also, basically, this is a kind of animal learning. So what do you mean by animal learning? So we are thinking about the fundamental reasons why humans are smarter than animals. And there's a very interesting conclusion, not from myself, it's from Big History project. So in the Big History project, they examine the history from the Big Bang to the present, several billion years of history. They are asking the fundamental question, so what is the major difference between humans and animals? So the answer here is called collective learning. And in collective learning, and we are learning from data, but at the same time, we are preserving the intelligence, sharing it with others, and also passing to the next generation. In the current AI, we are more focused on the first part. The first part, we just learn from the data. We're not sharing with others. So that's a big problem for our current AI approach. So our approach at Carleton University, and we not only learn the data, we're gonna preserve the intelligence and share with others. So that's exactly what humans do right now. And specifically, blockchain is used for incentive, trust, and privacy. And in this figure, we show that there's two vehicles. Probably one vehicle is from sunny California, got rich sensor, many sensors, but has no experience or less experience in driving in snow condition. And our car here, okay, we don't have a lot of sensors, but we got 10 years experience in driving in snow. We know how to drive in snow. So we can share the information, share the intelligence with each other, and then we can improve the performance of autonomous driving. So that's a basic idea. And specifically, this is under our Carleton Connected Autonomous Vehicle project. We call it CANAL. So this is $1 million funding from Canadian Safety and Security Program, CSSP, for 3 years. And Transport Canada is working with us. And also there's an industry partner, which is BlackBerry and QNX. So there are several pictures about our project. In the middle, it's myself and our Dean Fred. Thank you, Fred. And also our students. Okay, so those are the demo we did last year. And this year, in 2 weeks later, we're gonna do the similar demo for our connected autonomous driving. So the conclusion here, connected autonomous vehicles are coming, and everyone is talking about it, and the impact are huge. But the technology is really, really hard because big data is not the same as big intelligence. And in our approach, we are trying to learn from our humans, and we use collective learning among connected and autonomous vehicles. And not just learning from the data, we're going to share the intelligence. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Claudia Kriviak, and I'm Vice President for Corporate Planning, Development, and Strategic Initiatives at the Ontario Centres of Excellence, or OCE. This morning, I'm going to talk to you about some of the things that OCE is doing that are directly related to data analytics, big science, and machine learning, including some programs that may be of interest for students, researchers, and entrepreneurs to be able to leverage. But first, I'd like to begin with a few words about OCE. OCE is a not-for-profit organization. We've been around for just over 30 years. We support largely collaborative R&D projects, as well as technology development and commercialization projects. We work with researchers at all of Ontario's universities and colleges, as well as campus entrepreneurs, startups, and SMEs. The primary metric that we assess the projects that we support on is the potential for training and job creation opportunities that are created as a result of these collaborations. The programs fall into 5 general areas: so industry academic R&D collaboration, campus entrepreneurship, commercialization and customer demonstrations, advanced technology platforms, and clean technology. And today I'm going to talk about the advanced technology platforms, as it's probably the most relevant to the audience. So generally, in terms of Ontario's transformative technology initiatives, over the last 2 to 3 years, both the Ontario government and the Government of Canada, alongside with industry, have made significant investments in emerging and transformative technologies. And I'm just going to highlight a few of these initiatives. 5th generation cellular mobile communications. So that's the 5G Encore initiative that was announced last year, which is a collaboration among 3 levels of government: Ontario, Quebec, and the Government of Canada, as well as 5 multinational companies, together with researchers and small and medium-sized companies. And I'll talk about that initiative in greater detail. Next Generation Networks, CENGEN, which is based in Ottawa. Artificial intelligence investments through the Vector Institute in Toronto. Autonomous Vehicle Innovation Network, AVIN, which I will also speak about. The IBM Innovation Incubator. Next Generation Manufacturing Canada, which is one of the superclusters that was announced, and it's the Ontario-based one in advanced manufacturing, as well as the Advanced Manufacturing Consortium. So there are a large number of initiatives that are underway that represent hundreds of millions of dollars of investment by the public and the private sectors. And the fuel that drives all of these initiatives, or the common denominator, is big data. What this means for Ontario's researchers and companies is that what is being created is a transformative technology ecosystem where researchers and entrepreneurs are going to have the opportunity to access advanced technologies, leveraging big data analytics, machine learning, 5G and next generation networks, both wired and wireless, supercomputing, and cloud platforms and tools. And in terms of support for R&D projects, there's a bit of a shift. Previously or traditionally, support has been provided in the form of providing funding for researchers to do research. That is still available, but what many of these initiatives represent is also the opportunity, in addition to funding, to actually access advanced technology data platforms, so to access pre-commercial test beds and sandboxes so researchers and entrepreneurs and innovators can have the opportunity to develop and test new technologies. And I'm going to talk about a couple of those initiatives that OCE is involved in as a partner or a partnership coordinator. The first one is AVIN, which is the Autonomous Vehicle Innovation Network, which was announced last year. And AVIN has a number of components to it. One of the components is a demonstration zone in Stratford, Ontario. So this is an opportunity for researchers and entrepreneurs that have innovative technologies that are related to autonomous or connected vehicle applications. There's an opportunity in Stratford to put those technologies onto vehicles, integrate them with other technologies, and then demonstrate them to potential customers in the global supply chain. So the OEMs, the automakers. There is a series of regional technology development sites that is being supported across the province of Ontario that are focused on different areas. And each of these sites leverages the capacity of a specific region in a specific area related to connected autonomous vehicles. For example, in Durham, the focus is on human-machine interfaces and the user experience in a connected and autonomous vehicle. Hamilton, multimodal and integrated mobility. Ottawa, vehicular networks and communications to leverage the tremendous capacity in Ottawa around those areas of expertise. Windsor, vehicle cybersecurity and cross-border technologies. Toronto, artificial intelligence, of course. And then Waterloo, high-definition HD 3D mapping and localization. And the intent across the demonstration zone and the regional technology development sites is to create a very robust network across the province where there are opportunities for collaboration, but also opportunities to share data. And I'm going to talk about the data sharing protocol around AVEN in a moment. There is a research and development partnership fund that has periodic calls for proposals that researchers and their industry collaborators are able to apply to for funding that ranges from $100,000 all the way to $1 million for collaborative demonstration and research and development projects. There is an internship program that is specifically focused on placing interns with companies to work on projects directly related to connected and autonomous vehicles. And as well as there's something called a central hub. What the central hub is, it provides a focal point in the province of Ontario for all things related to connected and autonomous vehicles from the perspective of R&D and technology development. So this is a very vibrant network. There's a lot of support and very different initiatives. And as a result, there's also going to be a lot of data that is going to be generated. So what AVEN has introduced as a part of all of these initiatives, so as a part of all of the projects and collaborations that are funded under the AVEN umbrella, there's something called the Data and Information Sharing Protocol. So what is it? The DISP, as we call it, enables the collection of non-proprietary data across all of those initiatives that I've just outlined. It defines the scope of the data collection process, and it describes the type of data and information to be collected. It also describes the type of analysis and public reporting required to achieve the program objectives, and it outlines the responsibilities of all of the parties involved: industry, academia, entrepreneurs, and the government. And so why is there a data and information sharing protocol that's being implemented across this entire initiative? There are a number of objectives. First of all, the objective is to advance knowledge and awareness of CAV technologies and products, to provide insights and information to help improve CAV products, technologies, and processes, to allow Ontario and its municipalities to support and advance the deployment and adoption of connected and autonomous vehicles, and to contribute to facilitating government decision-making around CAV deployment in the coming years and decades, and as well as contributing to the building public education and awareness around CAV technologies. So the intent is, further to my colleagues' comments from the previous presentation, in order for us to move forward, there is a real imperative to actually not only use the data that we have, but actually share our learnings with the broader ecosystem. So that is the Connected Autonomous Vehicle Innovation Network, or AVEN. The second initiative that I'd like to talk about is the 5G initiative, or what is referred to as Encore. Encore is a public-private partnership that delivers the first Canadian pre-commercial 5G wireless testbed for innovation. The objective is to enable researchers and SMEs to capitalize on the 5G market opportunity by providing access to a pre-commercial 5G testbed for the purposes of R&D and technology development. This is a significant initiative supported by an investment of $67 million from the Government of Ontario, $67 million from the Government of Quebec, $67 million from the federal government, matched in cash contributions by $200 million from 5 industry partners. So Ericsson, Ciena, Thales, CGI, and IBM. This initiative is across the Ontario-Quebec Technology Corridor, and the program delivery partner in Ontario is OC, and in Quebec it's CFRIO and Prompt that play a similar role to OCE in Ontario. So what is it and what does it offer? Similar to AVEN, which is a connected and autonomous vehicle network across the province of Ontario, this is a network related to 5G technology development and a test bed or a sandbox for the development of technologies that will leverage 5G. So what it provides for is an open 5G platform access. So researchers, entrepreneurs, and SMEs have the opportunity to access this 5G pre-commercial testbed for the purposes of R&D and technology development. The focal points for the 5G access are the 3 hubs. So in Ottawa, it's Invest Ottawa. There's a 5G antenna at Invest Ottawa, and it's live right now, and the project is the site is accepting applications currently. There's another one in Waterloo in Communitech, and that's live, and the one in Mars will be going live very, very shortly. But all 3 are currently developing a pipeline of projects and applications. There is funding for SME technology development projects, and there's also funding for academic technology development projects as well. So some of you may be aware, we have been doing calls for proposals where the anchor firms on this initiative have identified research areas related to 5G that they're interested in collaborating with university researchers on, and that has gone out to the ecosystem, and we're receiving expressions of interest. And the support for those projects can be anywhere from $100,000 all the way to $500,000. There's an opportunity for demonstration projects between SMEs and larger companies. There is an internship program component for students and recent graduates to work on projects and with companies that are directly related to 5G R&D and application development. And finally, there are business advisory services that are provided through these 3 hubs. So I've just taken the opportunity to highlight a couple of initiatives that currently OC is involved in that are focused on emerging and advanced technology development, where the role of data is extremely important, and these initiatives will generate not only a lot of data, but a lot of new research and development will go into these initiatives, and then there's an opportunity for Ontario and Ontario researchers to play a leading role in that. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to the next speaker. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Mari Teitelbaum. I am the CIO and VP at CHEO, Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario. Just a little bit of background. I promise not to spend too much time on it, but CHEO is the freestanding pediatric center here in Ottawa, affecting about 500,000 kids a year, 70,000 emergency visits, surgeries, visits. Pretty busy place, supporting the entire region as it relates to kids. When I started in this role, CIO stood for Chief Information Officer. We really had awful data. So everything you guys are talking about, none of it was possible because we were still paper-based organization without any data beyond the chart in front of the provider and the patient. Fortunately, we started an initiative a few years ago, put in Epic as our electronic patient record, made sure families and patients have access to that information to drive serious change as it relates to information in the hands of those who need it. We are looking at about 150,000 encounters every year, over 1 million data elements being collected every month. So you can see everything you've been talking about as it relates to big data. We, even as recently as 2017, were just in the process of figuring out how to collect that information about the kids in our region. Fortunately, we're there. Where we are today, so we're talking about where we want to be in 10 years, but really where we are today and where we have been over the past few years is using data for retrospective analysis. So I'll never forget, about 7 years ago, we had this maternal newborn dashboard as a tool within CHIO that's used across the province, essentially a report card for hospitals on the quality of care. It's a bit of big data. There's a lot of data elements that go into this. We were really proud about making a judgment call as to whether people were green or yellow or red in the quality of care they were providing. This was a really big thing back in 2013 when we launched it. Same in hospital operations today. We've got happy faces and sad faces if kids are being seen quickly enough, or getting the appropriate care, or having adverse events, things like that. So this to me is all retrospective data analysis, and this is the reality of what we're living with today and how we're using data today. Now that Epic is live, and all of you are doing amazing work that our providers read about in the New York Times and Toronto Star and Globe and Mail, all of a sudden everybody's asking, what does this mean for the hospital? What are we going to do with all of this over the next 10 years? So we changed my title. I'm no longer the Chief Information Officer. I'm now the Chief Innovation Officer of the hospital, trying to figure out what to do with all of the information that you guys are generating and all the technologies and solutions that are coming at us in lightning speed. And as I sat down and talked to providers and families about what it means, really it is that big shift from going retrospective to prospective. So at the end of the day, we want to stop reacting to data, and we want to start using data proactively to change the way we deliver care. So obviously, identifying people at risk. You've all heard about sepsis initiatives and things like that. Let's not wait until the terrible thing happens. Let's know that it's about to happen and do something about it proactively, saving people ending up in hospital, ending up in intensive care, things like that. This obviously goes to personalized medicine genomics, understanding that people are at risk way before it happens and being able to do something about it out of hospital. So this is a huge way where we're going to leverage big data in order to improve care. It is happening. Someone made mention of pathology and medical imaging. All the PAC systems we have now already include AI to help prioritize the work in the radiologist's queue to make sure that they're focusing on the cases that really need attention and proactively dealing with those, rather than spending their urgent time on things that are probably normal and probably low risk. So this is, again, this concept of being proactive in care. Command center, this is a favorite of mine. So again, we look at last month, how many kids stayed in the hospital too long. If we could be proactive about that and actually have a command center, just like they do in airports, to watch the data and see as kids are coming up to an inappropriate length of stay, let's do something about it proactively with all the millions of data elements we've got to ensure that the appropriate care is happening, and we're dealing with hurdles in advance. And finally, population health. This is a picture from, if I could see my notes, I would know. Can't remember. Place in the States that is doing amazing, amazing work as it relates to big data. And they have actually been able to make the case that an investment in population health is going to save their hospital money. And so they can they're renovating houses, they're selling healthy foods at a loss, all because they can prove to their HMO, thanks to big data, that those investments offset the healthcare costs later on. These are things we've been talking about in healthcare for 30 years, but because we didn't have Epic installed, because we only had bits and bobs of data, and we didn't have comprehensive big data, we couldn't make these links, we couldn't make these arguments. And so as Chief Innovation Officer, I'm incredibly excited to shift the conversation from what happened yesterday to what are we going to do today to make tomorrow better. I believe that's it. Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm going to start with a few true confessions. I'm not a researcher in AI. I'm not a data scientist. I'm not a data analyst. I generate data, or my lab generates data through biomechanical analysis and the motor control of human movement. But I do have a serious case of data science envy, and it's about the possible. The power of data, how it can transform the way we live, how it transforms the workplace, and also how it can optimize AI as a technology lever to really impact multiple sectors. And it could be autonomous vehicles, it could be precision agriculture, manufacturing, retail, medicine, the list goes on. Now, there's an exponential increase in AI-based applications that's predicted over the next few years. So with that, it's also then imperative that we prepare the talent or the highly qualified professionals, people, HQP, with the knowledge, skills, and creative thinking so that they can cultivate a strong and robust AI ecosystem that's going to advantage us economically as well as with respect to our social well-being. So there's a certain element of responsibility that's built into that. Now, I should say that at the Vector Institute, I am on secondment from Queen's University, and that was after completing 8 years of a 5-year vice provost term in graduate studies. And my role in Vector is heading the academic partnerships team, which focuses on implementing strategies to support talent development and connecting them with AI-enabled organizations. So Vector, and you've heard a little bit about it, is an independent, not-for-profit organization. It was established in 2017, and it's really dedicated to leading and advancing AI research, primarily through excellence in research in machine learning and deep learning. It receives funding from the federal government as part of the Pan-Canadian AI strategy. It also receives funding from the Ontario government and through industry sponsorships. And the industry sponsorships provide a strong opportunity for translating the research into application. So that's a very important piece. Now, attracting talent in form of faculty, students, postdocs, what have you, as well as developing an extensive network of partnerships is mission critical to Vector. And it's in fact the access to the partnerships, the talent, and the resources that is most compelling to industry. And I think is probably most of interest to the people here in the audience as well. Now, new companies, labs, startups, they've made a huge investment, and it's not uncommon to see those in the news that they've relocated or are setting up shop in Canada and Ontario in particular. And it's become a regular occurrence. They're coming on the promise that they will be able to find the talent and the skilled personnel that they're looking for to advance their particular company. Now, in May 2018, the Globe and Mail quoted an analyst from Information and Communications Technology stating that 4,000 new positions for data scientists are going to be created annually, perhaps the fastest growing job market, bar none. Now, with funding and in partnership with the Ontario government, Vector's launched the Raise AI initiative. And this is intended to help address the surging need for HQP and serving as a catalyst for workforce development. It comprises 3 core elements, which are actually quite interrelated. And the hope is that together through education, talent placement, and networking, that will develop a high-flow pipeline feeding the needs of multiple sectors. And the focus at the moment is on master's education. I'll make that a little clearer in a moment. Now, this Raise AI initiative was launched in response to the growing industrial needs and the lament that we constantly hear from companies and organizations that they just can't seem to find the people with the skills that they're looking for. And in terms of proactive, it's designed to track the talent that's being produced in our Ontario universities and the job placement to better understand that supply-demand relationship on which we actually have very, very little concrete data. Now, the first thing is, what do we really know about what organizations are looking for? So in early 2018, a working group was established, and they consulted with over 150 people from industry, government, health organizations, and universities. And what they were seeking was they wanted to get their perception of where this skills gap actually was. What are the core competencies and skills that they're looking for in graduates from AI-related programs? And so once all that information was obtained, and that was obtained through discussions, web-based discussions, polling, a variety of strategies, it was distilled into putting together a list of about 8 priority areas. And of course, this relates, of course, to the discipline of study or the field of study. But nonetheless, these are the expectations that every card-carrying graduate of these AI programs would have, to varying degrees, and relevant, of course, to the discipline that they're studying. So in terms of technical computing skills, I mean, it could be programming, it could be data visualization, computational thinking, it could be, setting up the problem appropriately and an appropriate analytical approach, and so on and so forth. Key, and what was perhaps most commonly mentioned by all sectors and stakeholders, was the importance of, again, every card-carrying graduate to fully have an appreciation of what are the societal and ethical implications of AI and the works and its solutions and applications. So once this list was established, it was shared with universities, and AI-related programs were then invited to submit their curricula and their program descriptions to Vector, where it was reviewed by a panel of experts from industry as well as from universities. And what they were looking for was to determine whether or not the learning outcomes associated with the programs aligned with the kinds of skills and competencies that they were seeking. Did it contain practical applications, be it in the form of a capstone, a project, or some similar kind of requirement? Was there direct application? Was there opportunity for students to engage in team approaches to finding solutions and interdisciplinary communication? And then based on this, if they met those criteria, then they were recognized as an AI master's programs. Now, you'll see the scholarship sitting off to the side. It's simply a strategy to attract talent into these programs. And so the number of students enrolled in these programs are now being tracked, as well as the number of graduates. And because, and here's sort of a fun, if not a weird fact, is we currently have no idea how many graduates are being produced through our Ontario universities who have the skills and knowledge that can contribute to an AI-related workforce. It's just not known. So this is part of acquiring that information. I mean, we have ideas, but if we want to better understand what the supply chain looks like, we need to know this. So since July 2018, 16 programs are now recognized, being delivered through 8 universities, and more are forthcoming. Primarily, these are in core technology, so computer science, engineering, data science. However, increasingly, we're seeing complementary AI-related programs, now primarily in business and health, but I expect that in not too distant future, we'll be seeing programs stemming out of social sciences and humanities as well. And by leveraging our partnerships with Ontario-based sponsors and health organizations, students in these programs now have opportunities to apply their knowledge and skills in an AI workforce setting through either internships, projects, or access to data sets. And this network serves to build labor force attachment among the programs and students, but it also serves to enhance the awareness of the breadth and depth of the talent pool, thereby supporting the ultimate goal, which is to support a high-flow talent pipeline. And just for information, the projected intake to these programs in fall 2019 is over 440 students and building. Now, setting up processes and structures is one thing, but impact can be amplified through face-to-face interaction. Experience tells us, generally speaking, and perhaps a little bit overly embellished today, but the different stakeholder groups tend to live in their own bubbles. They speak their own dialect, and so we've got a communication gap. Bringing them together, putting them in the same room, is like a modern-day Rosetta Stone. Now, as an example of that, a few weeks ago, we hosted just an informal reception. We brought in the program directors and faculty associated with the recognized AI master's programs. We brought in representatives from our sponsor organizations and health organizations and just had them talking. AI master's programs, they showcase their curricula and the attributes of their future graduates. Companies talked about their interests and the challenges they faced in finding the talent that they were looking for. But there was a buzz, and people were talking, people were listening, people were learning, and they were gaining new insights. So the companies left with having a much better appreciation of where they might source talent, where they can find the skills and the attributes that they're looking for. The academics in the crowd, they left, they were happy chappies too, because now they've identified potential industries and companies that they can direct their graduates to seek out and explore future opportunities with. And so overall, what the sense was that there was a dip in the perceived skills gap. And that was a direct result, or at least we'd like to think so, from the close encounters of the meaningful kind. By increasing awareness. So I'm not suggesting that the skills gap doesn't exist, but I am putting it out there and positing that it might be partially due to the fact that we're not necessarily aware of where the talent resides, where it's being generated, and the lack of communication between the people and the various stakeholders. Networking is critical. It's absolutely key. And so the takeaway then is, one, we all got to get out more, talk more, explain more, listen more, but it's incumbent on all stakeholder groups to help mobilize the talent that's being generated, to become knowledgeable about the AI ecosystem, and in particular about those aspects that fall outside of our comfort zone or our own bubble. We know that industry needs talent, and those increases, or that talent need is going to only increase. Ontario has got talent. So if we can do, through networking, events, what have you, try to help connect these talent pools with the talent seekers, then I think we all stand to benefit. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. And let's have a good round of applause for the great speakers in the panel. So now we have time for some questions. So any questions for any of the panelists? If you can please go to the mic and...
Hi, I guess I have a couple of observations. One observation for Halim and another one for Richard. So Halim, what you're doing in intelligent 5G, I guess in order to have be able to accommodate dynamic posture of an individual based on the mood and all that. You have to receive. You have to send back to the network some data about the condition of the person at the time. So therefore, you're increasing the traffic in the network from that. But I guess on the other hand, you're hoping to save some traffic because that person may require less of a data rate, right? So is this trade-off included in your research? And the other observation I have for Richard is that you mentioned sharing information like the how to drive in the snow with people in California. I think the sharing of information may be a tougher problem than what it may seem on the surface, because a number of years ago we had we had a difficulty with sharing of medical records between hospitals because each hospital had their own machines, which from different vendors with different format and all that. So how are you going to tackle this incompatibility problem with sharing of information? So, please comment.
Yes, thank you for the observation. Let me try to explain that a little bit more. Today, if I want to let us say, video streaming, whether I click to do that or Brenda does, network does not differentiate. It is delivered in the same way. But my eyes are weak. Probably there is no point in delivering me 8K video because I won't be able to differentiate between 8K and 4K. On the other hand, I might have musical ears. I would appreciate four-way stereo, for instance. So if the network, and actually these are the applications from today, the theme of today's discussion is Data Day 16.0, 10, 15 years down the road. Imagine we have these immersed reality applications which might require gigabits per second connectivity, mind-boggling from today, but these things are coming in the 6G era. So there is a big opportunity to customize the delivery so that whatever I enjoy and benefit and appreciate much, it will be delivered. And as you mentioned, this will occasionally, or most of the time actually, result in savings in the bandwidth, power, so on and so forth, resources for the network. Because this is a fundamental principle from systems design. If your design is static, you design it for the worst case so that it should work all the time for all situations. So here we are moving from a grossly over-provisioned design, because we didn't have any other option until today, but through AI and data analytics in real time to the needs of the customer, and this might result in big savings for the network as well. Obviously, there is overhead for that, and everything is opportunistic. This with even small amount of feedback, and the feedback may not be raw feedback sent to the network. This might be processed feedback at the user side. Therefore, many things can be achieved with a small amount of data. I will take this opportunity to highlight one important point which may not be very obvious for a less informed person, and that is the following. Big data and AI is penetrating in all fields. But in networks, there is a big challenge which often does not exist in other applications, and that is the latency. So if we take a medical application, for instance, I have some abnormal skin, go to doctor and so on and so forth. There is a worry about cancer. With AI and data analytics, this decision can be made in maybe a few seconds or necessary in few days. There is no urgency. So you might have a day or more to do all your hocus pocus and abracadabra, all correlations and so on. But in many applications in networks, it has to be like this. Actually, like this is too slow. Today, video delivery requires 200 millisecond latency, but tomorrow when we are talking about connected vehicles, we are talking about 1 millisecond latency. I don't have time to do lots of processing. And often these associations are very complex, especially in my presentation, the satisfaction analysis, so complex to govern by even equations. So I have to make these decisions very quickly, and that is the biggest challenge in front of us. At Carleton, our expertise in my group, Richard's group as well, we work on real-time AI and data analytics, and that is our main differentiator.
Richard, do you have anything?
Yeah, okay. So thank you very much for the very interesting question. And so I want to highlight that in our approach, we are not just sharing information, and we are sharing the intelligence. So that's a big difference between the current AI and our our approach. The reason is that, think about the big data application, for example, autonomous driving, huge amount of data, gigabits per second. And if you are sharing data, and like Halim said, won't have any real-time intelligence anymore. And so that's why in our approach, we are sharing the intelligence. So that's what we are learning from our human being right now. For example, in this room, we are not sharing the real data of autonomous driving. We are sharing the intelligence, the knowledge. So that's the current approach. And that's also related to my current thinking. So if you look at the history in the past 200 years, what are the major cooperation schemes we are building? And the first one, I think, is transportation. So using transportation, we can have, for example, the water not from Ottawa, it's from Quebec, right? So the second one should be energy. And with the electricity, we can easily get the energy. And the third one, which we are currently using, is the internet, right? So using internet, we can easily get the information. But we are going to the number 4 here. The number 4 here, what we are thinking about it right now is sharing the intelligence. So that's why we call it the Internet of the Internet of the Intelligence. So that's our. So I'm saying, so it's the benefits is here, but it's very difficult. Like many people are saying, it's very difficult. Also, you got some bad experience with sharing even the information. So what are the solutions? The solution we are talking about right now is to build the trust, to keep the privacy, and also there's some incentives. So that's why in our current approach, we try to combine some good features from blockchains. So blockchain, not just Bitcoins. And we are trying to use some blockchains, the technologies, to our approach right now.
Okay, thank you. We have time, 5 more minutes for questions, so please go ahead.
My question is for Brenda. I really like that you talked about the people side of AI and the talent deficit, right? My question is, how do companies get involved? I'm from the city of Ottawa, and we'd love to be part of it as well.
I'll give you my card. I mean, Vector does have its sponsors, but there's also, I mean, there's a desire to develop as broad a base network as possible, because just, going with the big companies or the small, medium-sized enterprises, I mean, there's startups we're interested in, and it's really, if we can have regional representation and ensure that the talent isn't just restricted, or the access to it isn't just restricted to one particular area, but expanding that geographical reach, everybody benefits from that. Because our students, as you saw from the universities, and that list is expanding, has not bad, it's going to be better, regional representation of the province, but there are regional differences in terms of needs and such. So if people are interested in partnerships, please just follow up, and we'll be happy to have those conversations.
Okay, thank you. Another question here, and maybe we'll limit it to 3 more questions. So.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to thank the panels. It was very interesting and informative. One thing that I noted was there was a real effort to share information. And one of the questions that I have, mostly for our CHEO team, is with healthcare records, hopefully kids, when they come, they don't have an elaborate history, right? As we age, of course, and that is a common thing for all of us, we have a history that travels with us. And what was asked earlier, I don't think it was really elaborated on, or maybe I missed it by the gentleman sitting here, was how do we share that information across systems and platforms? And are we currently working with the Ontario government or with other agencies to kind of create that story that can then be traveling with our patients across the medical field and experience?
Yeah, that's a good one. So there are 3 different ways that we can do this. Point-to-point sharing. So you were at CHEO, now you're at TOH. Can CHEO and TOH talk to each other and share the data across point-to-point? Yes, that's happening. We're getting there. It's not as hard as it was 10 years ago from a technology perspective. Second, do you throw all the data into a big repository and make sure people have appropriate access to that repository? So regardless of where you are in the province, yes, that's happening, facilitated by the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. My favorite model, that is not as mature as it needs to be, is patients actually owning their own data. So forget hospitals connecting with each other, because if you end up in Indonesia, it's not going to do you a lot of good that TOH and GEO can share. And so personal access to health records, be that through blockchain or other trusted mechanisms, is really where things should be going. That's not moving as quickly as the first two models. But from my personal opinion, having been at this for about 10 years, that is the optimal way of doing it. All of that's about technology, policy, and law as it relates to sharing of information, was mentioned by the keynote speaker this morning, is key. And I would say it's trending in the right direction. So we share actually our EPIC environment with sick kids, because the sickest children travel between our two hospitals. And we have managed to work with the Information Privacy Commissioner and the lawyers and everyone else who gets involved to make sure that the right information is available at the right time. Lots of effort, but getting to the right place. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, all the speakers, for the great presentation. I have a remark for Professor Yannick Omerolu. I think you're being too optimistic about the psyche of the human beings, because if you look at, for example, all the bad reviews on TripAdvisor, or the waiter didn't smile at me, 1 star. What I think is going to happen is that, so the thing is, you're trying to get an optimal bandwidth. That means that you won't be able to make everybody happy at the same time, for reason of technological reason that you explained very well. So what's going to happen is that people will forget all the time that the system worked well for them, and keep in mind that time I wanted to file my taxes and I didn't have enough upload speed, and it failed. So I think I see what the worth of what you're going, but I think that the human element has to be reevaluated. That's my comment.
Yes, well, thank you very much. One good thing about AI data analytics is that the human side is getting also smarter to fight against that. So this is what you are saying. I take that, and very true indeed. But I'm thinking in a very fundamental level that anyone who has taken a communications course, third year engineering, the course starts with a 3-box diagram, maybe first lecture, transmitter, channel, receiver. That transmitter is a box, we just leave it there. But in reality, in most of the applications, there is the human person behind that, and it is awfully complex. In our communication theory and networks, we have never touched that, and we didn't have means to touch that. We are at a very exciting time that we can basically open the box, understand it better, and then design everything accordingly. Let me give you an example. You just mentioned the taxi system. I would have big incentive to cooperate with the network if in this case, transportation network. Look, you come to Carleton every day and it takes 30 minutes and so on. Sometimes it might even take a little bit more than usual. But in that 1% of the time when you go to the Ottawa General Hospital with an ambulance, I am guaranteeing you I will zap you there in half a second. I will say, hallelujah, I want to be part of that, right? So we are being connected 24/7. That goes without saying. It is becoming existential. But most of the applications are leisure, so on and so forth. We have lots of tolerance embedded. But if I am in front of a very important meeting and I have to search something at that instant, I would be very happy if that, again, 1% of the time, network gauges this import to me and then delivers a super high quality, whatever that application is at that time. I think I will be tolerant to other glitches here and there. So there is a lot of room to explore. This is a new paradigm, and we are learning as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. Maybe the last question and the quick answer, because we're over time now.
Thank you for coming. I have a question for the representative from CHEO. Could you comment a little bit on some of the challenges you faced in changing the work culture at CHIO from paper to digital, and in particular, getting people to trust the insights that are coming out of these black boxes that lay people don't understand, I guess. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a great question. I actually did miss my last slide, which talked about operational buy-in. So people know how to look at historical data, know how to study it, and make decisions based on that. It will be a seismic shift to get them to start trusting advice that's coming to them from a computer, from a black box. There is no easy answer. There's not a quick answer, I'm afraid. I will say that the comfort with technology is growing. So I started in healthcare 10 years ago. I engineer in high tech, decided I wanted to apply that expertise in healthcare. And really it was pushing technology on our providers. In those 10 years, fundamental shift, they're pulling. We cannot keep up with the requests. That has to do with a few things. We now have 10 years more experience of people getting more comfortable with it, but also the generation that is coming in as providers is fundamentally different. They have grown up with technology and have expectations of technology to make their jobs easier versus those who believe in the art of healthcare and the knowledge that they carry in their brains. And so I do think the combination of the two is allowing for quicker adoption than we would have seen a decade ago. Fair?
Thank you very much.